Hi, and welcome to my new series on international student debt in Canada. Now, today's episode is going to focus on my own story of navigating debt in Canada when I was an international student. My journey to Canada actually started in 2007 when I met some international recruiters who came to my school in Lagos, Nigeria. Before I met them, I was hell-bent on going to the States. However, they mentioned that I could get my permanent residence in 2 years after studying and graduating, and then I could get my citizenship in about another 3 to 4 years. And so I decided to jump on this opportunity. I figured that once I get my citizenship in Canada, then I could move to the US. But 17 years later, and I'm still here. But I was still a naive teenager. I was excited to leave my country and create new adventures different from the big city Lagos lifestyle. So much that I settled at a university in Thunder Bay, Ontario, which is significantly different from my usual lifestyle. And Thunder Bay, Ontario has lots of nature, mountains, a lake, there's a reserve over there as well. And so I went to school in Lakehead University in Thunder Bay, Ontario, and I had fun with my friends, and I worked as well, but less than 20 hours a week with my work permit. And I used most of the money for entertainment, clothes, and miscellaneous, really. My parents, my dad, paid my school fees and my rent. However, this changed when I was in the second year of my program. My father's business took a huge hit and he could not pay my fees. So I was left owing over 18,000 Canadian dollars, and I had no way to pay for my school fees. And what was worse was that I did not understand that it was me and not my dad responsible for that debt. So I kept calling my dad, and he would state every single week that the money was coming, and I would relay that message back to the school. And so the conversation became a cycle each week, and I really started getting anxious because my school kept indicating that they would not let me take more classes until the fees were paid. And so at that point, after a few weeks of going back and forth, I really stopped picking up their phone calls. I just figured that my dad would sort everything out like he always did. He would pay before the next year starts, and I would be back in school. A few months later, the international department contacted me and really wanted to know what was going on with my school fees and why they were late. And I told them why, and that my father's business is not doing so well right now. But really, they were not able to help me, and I applied for school bursaries and awards, but I did not receive any. Because most were for domestic students, and they were indicating that if you did not have financial issues, I don't know what they were using to judge financial issues, that you were not qualified. And so months after, when I was on a break from school, and so this was after the school year, I received a call from what was called collections. And so these collections people proceeded to tell me that Lakehead sent my debt to them and that I needed to pay it up. And so I was like, okay. I asked my friend what collections meant and really what this call really means. And so they indicated that my credit would be affected and I wouldn't be able to afford a house or a car in the future. And to be honest, that was my first time hearing about credit. But I really did not understand what credit was and really why I should have been concerned at that point in time. I had other pressing matters. If I did not return to school, I would have eventually been kicked out of Canada. And so I became anxious again and I stopped picking up their phone calls. But that was a terrible mistake. It was really just the beginning of my financial problems. And so a few months later, I received a mail, and in that mail was a lawsuit, and I was being sued for the money that I owed my school. In the suit, they had every conversation that I ever had with the university and all the times I indicated that I was going to pay. And the consequences from this lawsuit was astronomical. And really, that conversation was such a huge evidence that I would have never won that lawsuit. It would have been an open and shut case for Lakehead University. And so that day that I received that mail was officially the worst day of my life, and it was still the worst day of my life. I was scared, and I had no one to talk to about that issue. I went into a depressive state during that period, and I started having suicidal thoughts. Sometimes I would be walking on the road and I would see a train coming and I'd be like, can I just step here and just let this train pass through me and all my problems would be over? I didn't know what to do. Like, it was very hard for me. I felt at that point that I came to Canada from nothing and my life was going nowhere. And everyone around me was achieving and passing on in school, and I was just there. And that I was not going to achieve my dreams. I was going to be kicked out. I was going to return home with really nothing to show for the 2 years that I spent here. And so while I was wallowing in my troubles and really crying one night, one of my closest friends came to me and asked me what I was going to do about my situation. And our conversation was the turnaround in my own life. It was really the wake-up call for me, and that no one else but myself was responsible for my financial situation, and that I needed to get my life in order and make some grown-up decisions and really figure out a way to get back into school. And so during this time, Canadian immigration was a bit different, and they were not really monitoring students' enrollment. So I figured that I had 1.5 years to work and pay off my debt and apply for a new work permit. So I decided to take time off from school and work. I took up 3 jobs to start off my own debts. I tried to apply for a student line of credit, but since I had no co-signer, I got rejected for that. But I dusted off my shoulders and I started looking into the credit system and really what credit means in Canada and the consequences of having a low debt score. And for the first time, this is almost 3 years to the point that I've been here, I ordered my credit score and I saw how my school fees being with collections destroyed my score. And so I decided to answer that lawsuit and make a guilty plea, and I agreed to pay collections at least $500 a month. I also made a huge decision with my schooling. So I decided to complete a 3-year degree rather than a 4-year degree. And since I had completed 2 years, I just needed to complete 1 more year. Then I would go work after graduation and then become a permanent resident and then go back to complete my 4-year degree and apply to law school because at that time I wanted to be a lawyer. So after the 1.5 years had passed, I was able to pay over half of my debt and my father was able to pay the rest. I went back to school and completed my first semester, of which my father was able to pay. But when I completed my second term, my dad was not able to pay. And so at that point, I knew that I had to take over my financial situation. So I let him know that I would take care of the rest. He did not need to worry about me anymore, and besides, there were other siblings of mine that needed their tuition and their fees paid for. So I indicated that I would pay that amount, and I would pay other amounts for my schooling moving forward. So I was in a better state of mind to navigate my debt since I had initially done the work on searching for credit and researching the Canadian system and the debt system. And so I contacted my school to let them know that I would not be able to pay the funds in full, but I would make $600 each month, at least $600. And so the fees I owed around that time was about $7,000, so the debt was more manageable. And they indicated that I would not get that degree, so I would not get my certificate until I paid that entire $7,000. And so I got a job right out of school, and thankfully that job did not ask for my degree and that paper. And the job I got outside of school was actually in higher education in other universities. And so initially I was working in the international department, especially with international recruitment, and I got to see hand in hand how recruitment of students really work. And yeah, I wouldn't say much about that. And then I got to admissions, and then I moved on to financial aid, where I was really helping students get a hold of their lives and advocating for student funding and really financial literacy for students as well. And so with all those jobs, I was able to pay off my debt in 7 months from when I graduated. And so later on, 5 years later, I then fulfilled my dream of going back to school and completing my 4-year degree. But by this time, I had already worked and saved up a lot of money to go back to school, and I was a permanent resident. So I was able to go back to school at a domestic student rate, and I was able to get bursaries and student grants. And then I went on to get my master's, and most of my school fees were actually paid for by scholarships. 7 years since my fees was with collections, my credit score skyrocketed to excellent. So after 7 years, the credit system and how it works here, they removed my collections ding on my credit score. And so because I'd been paying extra care to my credit score, and I've been learning to pay my debt in time, and after I learned about the credit system here, I started paying extra attention to that. And with my score being excellent, I was able to get an auto loan with close to 0 interest rates, and I was able to get major increases to my credit limit on my credit cards. And I have my financial institutions calling me to open up a line of credit. So funny, I don't need the line of credit now, right? So the reason I'm sharing this story with you is to let you know that there are unexpected struggles, especially financial ones, that come with being an international student. And you're forced to grow up pretty quickly. And sometimes it might feel like there's no way out. In fact, for me, my work permit was about to expire when I was finally able to pay off my fees. Plus, there's actually very little help for international students from your institutions, whether colleges, universities, or polytechnics, to really deal with financial issues when they do arise. And unfortunately, some international students, and this number is actually climbing up in Canada, have succumbed to those suicidal thoughts, that comes when we have no control of the situation. But now looking back at how my financial situation and my debt unfolded, and the fact that I became a financial aid advisor to students at universities, I know a lot more about how to address these challenges, and now I can give you some tips on what to do in Canada when you get stuck financially. So stick around by subscribing to more of my videos on how to deal with debt and financial troubles in Canada. And if you enjoy this video, like and leave your comments down below. And add yourself to my waitlist on how to avoid thousands of dollar mistakes while studying in Canada. See you next time.